Welcome to Space Beat, powered by the USA Today Florida Network. This week, we're talking all things Starship as they prepare for their fifth test flight this year. Taylor Swift says she is never, ever, ever going into space. And scientists are hoping to get an up-close and personal view of 3I Atlas. Hello, everybody. I'm Rob Landers, your host. Welcome to Space Beat. And today I am joined by Space Beat reporter, or Space Team reporter, rather, Eric Lagatta. Eric, welcome back to the studio.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about Starship. All right, so it's launched 5 times this year. The first 3 times not so great, and then the 4th time they seem to have some success. What are we going to see? Hopefully, in this 5th launch attempt.
Yeah, well, I think SpaceX is definitely hoping to continue building on that momentum for this next Starship launch, which is planned for Monday, October 13th, that evening from Texas. So, you're going to see them, trying to, they're still getting ready to get their upper stage section of the vehicle capable of returning to the launch site. So they're going to try to do some testing and some maneuvers that will be needed to one day be able to return it back to base for a landing back at the launch pad, similar to what the booster's already been able to do 3 times. And then again, they're going to be kind of doing a stress test, if you will, on the rocket booster itself, known as Super Heavy, just to kind of push it beyond its limits. So for that reason, they're not going to be trying to return the booster to Starbase, and instead it's just going to make a water landing in the Gulf off the coast of Texas. But hopefully, if all goes well, the Starship upper stage vehicle itself will be able to go on for a lot longer and fly like halfway around the world or so in suborbit as they do some tests there. And I think they want to also do another test of deploying Starlink dummy satellites, which is something they did for the first time in August. So they want to do that again. And, that's another capability for Starship that SpaceX wants to have is the ability to deploy Starlink satellites into low Earth orbit, as the Falcon 9 rocket already has been able to do. So that just adds another spacecraft that's able to do that for them.
Got it. Okay, so all right, so we've got the upper and the lower stages, right? Okay, so when Starship launches, what is actually in that upper stage? Like, is that like, because eventually that's going to have like people in it, right?
Correct. Yeah. So the upper stage is just it's more simply known as Starship, or even just Ship, if you want to just call it Ship. And that would be the capsule or the upper portion of the entire spacecraft that would eventually travel in orbit and would be where astronauts and cargo would actually be. So that's different, obviously, from the lower stage, which is known as Super Heavy. That's the rocket booster that is basically just there to help get the upper stage to orbit, essentially. So as of now, obviously, no humans have ridden on the upper stage yet. Since they're just doing test flights. But upper stage, is basically empty, except obviously they have now these dummy Starlink satellites on there that they want to try to deploy. But otherwise, I'm not aware of anything else that might be on there. But I'm not positive that's the case. I'm not positive if there's anything else on there.
Well, that's actually good since they've had 3 explosions so far this year. But just to kind of give viewers a sense of maybe what the plan is. So you've got this, because we've never seen a ship like this, a rocket like this, where you have space for passengers and space for cargo, other than the space shuttle. So is that kind of the configuration we're looking at, like passengers at the top of this thing and then cargo lower in? What is SpaceX's plan with this, with Starship?
Yeah, so the ultimate plan is that Starship is is part of Elon Musk's grand vision for SpaceX of being the vehicle that's going to help humans reach Mars in the years ahead. So he's talked about 2026 potentially being the first time that an uncrewed Starship could launch for Mars from Earth. Of course, that's kind of the year where the Earth and Mars are kind of lined up in their orbits of the sun, where the trip wouldn't be quite as long. So that's kind of a short window to be able to do that. So I think if we're not able to do it in 2026, it would be another few years after that. I'm not sure what exactly year it would be, but we'd have to wait for that next window. But otherwise, Starship is also, there's a configuration of Starship that would be part of NASA's Artemis program for Artemis 3. And of course, that's the lunar missions coming up here. And so, the first Artemis 2 is on tap for 2026, but that's not a moon landing itself. So Artemis 3, as early as 2027, would actually return humans to the surface of the moon. And Starship would play a part in that by, basically taking the astronauts from orbit to the moon. They wouldn't ride Starship to the moon's orbit. They would ride the Orion spacecraft that NASA's building, but they would basically rendezvous with Starship in the moon's orbit and take that to the lunar surface. So those are a couple things coming up that Starship would play a key role in.
That is, of course, if Blue Origin doesn't beat them to the punch in developing their I think it was their Mark II lander, which Rick, Neil, and I talked about on last week's episode of Space Beat. If you haven't watched that episode, please, I recommend you go back and watch. Rick and I talked about his tour of the new facility that Blue Origin has out at the Space Center, and it's pretty amazing. So, okay, so moving on. Speaking of Blue Origin, we've had celebrities go up on Blue Origin flights in the past, like, William Shatner and Katy Perry. Katy Perry probably best known for coming down and calling herself an astronaut once she had gone up in her, 72-minute flight to space. Um, but this week we had another pop icon, probably better term, saying that she is never, ever, ever going to space. Eric, you have the story. What is going on with Taylor Swift?
Yeah, so for context, obviously Taylor Swift is doing a little bit of a press tour right now to promote her 12th studio album, Life of a Showgirl. And so she's been doing some radio interviews and appearing on talk shows, late night talk shows, and for interviews. And so in one of those interviews on BBC with Scott Mills, Scott asked Taylor Swift point blank, would you ever go to space? And Taylor Swift did not mince words about that. She basically said, "No, I would absolutely never do that." And I think the exact quote was, "Never. There's no reason to do that." So she was very clear on that. Seemed to shut the door on any possibility that she would ever go to space, like some other celebrities have done with Blue Origin. She continued saying, "quote It's cold. It's scary. I don't know if I can come back down."
Right,
So
because space is hard. Space is hard. It's not. I mean, it is a very hostile environment for humans. And I mean, Polaris Dawn, which happened, I believe it was last year, had the very first commercial or private company spacewalk. Jared Isaacman, who was once considered for NASA administrator, took a spacewalk in the Van Allen radiation belt, like this area of space where the sun's radiation is kind of mixing with Earth's atmosphere. And so he's taking a spacewalk out there. We don't know what's going to happen to him now. He could be glowing in his sleep. But I can understand when you have someone like Taylor Swift who doesn't need to go into space, doesn't need the wow factor, doesn't need to impress her fans, just got engaged and is now planning a life with Travis Kelce. What purpose would that have in her going? I mean, if you've looked at any of the lyrics to on the Life of a Showgirl album that she has just released, you know that her life is now Travis and having babies with Travis and planning a future with Travis. So the idea of going to space and not being able to come back, yeah, no, I get why she would say hard pass.
yeah, I think she's got enough going on in her personal life and her professional life. with her art and all that. And I think her focus really is yeah, it's on creating more art, creating more music for her fans, and obviously this next phase of her life, getting married as well. And I don't think I feel like most people probably are fine just keeping their feet on solid ground. I think I don't think there's anything wrong with not wanting to go to space. I know I can conclusively say if I ever had the opportunity, I probably would decline it myself. Not that I ever would have the
Same.
opportunity.
Same. I mean, because I've worked with Gannett and with the USA Today Network a very long time. The International Space Station, I believe, is coming up on 25 years of continuous manned spaceflight. Like we have had an American in orbit or on orbit for the past 25 years in the International Space Station, and you know, as a 30 something when that happened, when the first guys went up, I was like, hmm. But as I get older and I see the astronauts on the International Space Station, and I watch The Big Bang Theory, where character Howard Wolowitz goes up and installs a fancy toilet on the International Space Station. The more I've thought about it, it's like, claustrophobic. Not sure I could deal with that. I get kind of queasy anyway. I don't know that I really want to deal with the zero G and the dizziness. Nah, I think that's a hard pass for me. Again, I can understand why Taylor's like, no, I'm going to stay on Earth. Also, it really didn't bode well for Katy Perry. Like, she got some pretty significant. She and Gail King, who was on the flight with her, both got some pretty significant backlash from that, right?
Yeah, yeah, and now Taylor Swift didn't necessarily reference anybody by name, but she did when she was talking with Scott Mills on the BBC interview. She did kind of talk about like she did reference some of the negative public attention that past celebrity space launches have gotten. So she said, "quote It doesn't matter if you go because everyone thinks that you didn't go, or they have a weird take on it." So she did kind of reference that as well. So I'm sure that kind of plays into her thinking, like seeing, some of the negative attention some of these other, missions have gotten, wouldn't necessarily make me want to go either. So I can't blame her for that.
Yeah, well, I it's very very fitting that people from Florida that I've talked to that have actually met Taylor Swift have said she's very down to earth. Yes, literally and figuratively.
There you go.
Okay, so speaking of things that are not of this Earth or of this solar system, let's shift gears to 3I Atlas. Okay, so this is the third interstellar object that we know of since like they say with hurricanes, since they started keeping records. 3I for Third Interstellar Atlas, named after the telescope that discovered it. I am seeing a lot of speculation online about what this thing is. Like, it's giving off uh, chemical signatures that can only be found in industrial use. Like, it's giving off nickel but not iron. It's gone from a red glow to a green glow really quickly, which means the chemical composition's like different. Like, you can find all kinds of conspiracy theories out there about 3I Atlas. It's on the other side of the sun right now, so we can't see it. So what's it doing now? Is it launching mini probes at Mars to check it out? That kind of stuff. What is going on with 3I Atlas?
Yeah, yes. So we've talked about this before. There's we've been tracking this comet or object, whatever it is, for a few months now, since July, and public interest has definitely not waned on it at all. In fact, it seems like it's only gotten more strong the closer this thing gets to the sun, and that's really what's going on right now with it. This object's just hurtling toward the sun, picking up speed, and as it goes, and also just kind of getting more active. The sun's heat is bringing out some interesting characteristics and from this object. And so really the world's scientists and astronomers and space agencies are just trying to do anything they can to observe it any chance they get, and learning a little bit more about it as they go along. So yeah, like you said, right now it's out of our view from Earth, as it's kind of behind Mars from our vantage. But fortunately, the European Space Agency.
Behind Mars or on the other side? Behind the sun. Behind the sun, correct?
Oh, yes, behind the sun.
Behind the sun. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so but one of the benefits, though, is that we have probes around Mars and Jupiter, and so correct me if I'm wrong. I believe uh, it was yesterday, right? That we were looking at using Mars Express and one of the other Mars orbiters to see if we could get a glimpse of Three Eye Atlas from out there. Correct?
Yeah, so the European Space Agency has a couple orbiters around Mars that were able to kind of get some observations from October 1st to October 7th. And the closest that Three Eye Atlas came was on October 3rd, which is Friday. So, unfortunately, these orbiters are designed to look at the Martian surface from like a few hundred or a few thousand miles away. And so, this object, Three Eye Atlas, came within about 18.6 million miles of the orbiters. So, a little bit further out of range than these orbiters are really designed to observe things. But they still did get a little bit of a look. And I think the ESA is still trying to determine exactly what they got. But they did release a little bit of a grainy, fuzzy photo of it. And so you can see that, like, the nucleus of the object is kind of glowing, and it's kind of changing as it gets closer to the sun. It's kind of spewing off more dust and gas and stuff around its coma, which is surrounding the nucleus. So again, this is what astronomers say give it that telltale sign of being a comet, as opposed to something else, like especially like an asteroid, which is just an inactive rock. So that's what they're trying to get a look at.
Or an alien spaceship?
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the other things I've read is when I believe this is going to happen next year, when it starts moving back out of our solar system and it gets closer to a rendezvous with Jupiter. There's also some probes out by Jupiter that are hoping to get a look at it as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. So there's another probe by Jupiter that's supposed to be getting a look at it here in November. The only problem is it's so far away from us here on Earth that ESA doesn't expect to get the data back from that until February. So we're gonna have to wait a little bit. But the good news is that it should be back within view of Earth in December. And so we can get some more observations. Jupiter's not the Jupiter spacecraft is not our last hope of getting a look at this object. It's just the next one that we'll get that chance. But there will be, I'm sure in December, I'm sure that NASA and other astronomers and space agencies are going to be, really excited when this thing emerges again in December, and we can get another look at it.
All right. Well, Eric, as always, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate everything that you and your fellow colleagues, Rick Neal and Brooke Edwards, do every week to keep us all posted on the latest in space news. That's it for this week. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to click the subscribe button so you never miss one of our space videos. We'll see you next week.